Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to the latest edition of Math for the Impatient with our CTO and co-founder Stan Kladko. And today we are going to be talking about usability. So let's talk a little bit about that. What does it mean, Stan? Can you just give us a little bit of a feeling? What does it mean to be user-friendly, and why is that such an important thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcus. And before I start, I just want to put this in a bit of perspective. So last week, we had a meeting at SKALE, and it was an all-hands meeting all about our future and what the most important things are for SKALE. And, you know, we have the product is doing pretty well. We have some pretty good number of users and applications, and we have a growth in terms of the number of transactions that we process. So the next phase for us is actually how do we scale? So how do we actually have more users? And if you put this into perspective, we're actually not doing so bad even now. If you take the number of transactions we have per day, we're approximately the same as Cardano. We're actually doing more transactions per day than Algorand, for instance, right? So there are some projects that are doing less transactions per day. There are some projects like ZK rollups, they're doing very, very few transactions per day. So we're kind of in the middle of the group now, but we are growing. And the question is, how do we increase the use of our network? And how do we increase the count of transactions? So this actually all depends on usability, because it turns out that users use things that are simple and they don't use things which are complex. And I'll tell you the story about, there was a startup which is now a big company, Dropbox, and they used to do A and B testing on their website. And they basically, when you have a website, what you want to have, you want to increase the number of user signups, right? So they were measuring how many people that enter the website, how many of them actually sign up. And then they were modifying the website, basically doing A and B testing for Dropbox, just to increase the sign up rate. And then they kept on modifying the website, and at the end, they kept on simplifying it. And at the end, it was just like a one single huge button, sign up. And there was pretty much nothing else on the website. And this is an experiment which explains, you know, if you want users, you want to make things simple. So that's why usability and user friendliness is so important for us at SKALE, because users are exponentially scared by complex products. And also, you know, if it's a complex product, a typical consumer won't use it. You know, how many like grandmoms and grandpaps have you seen that use crypto, right? Like use even like Ethereum or MetaMask. You don't really see people like on the streets using crypto. So one way to understand it is that before Steve Jobs, before Apple, first Apple computer, there was this homebrew club, and people in the homebrew club, they were building their own PCs, essentially, their own personal computers, but they were not prepackaged. You could just buy electronic components and you would basically solder the computers yourself. And people in the homebrew club, including Steve Wozniak, they were totally happy. They didn't even understand why would one need to have a prepackaged, you know, computer, because for them it was totally actually natural to solder things. In fact, that was the most fun of it, you know, soldering. So Steve Wozniak actually hadn't have even the idea of like, you know, prepackaged computer, because he loved the way things were at Homebrew Club. So that was the entire idea of like Steve Jobs, that for people to use personal computers, they actually had to be much simpler. And I think that's pretty much what we have now in the blockchain. It's a Homebrew Club, in the sense that, you know, some people are using it's lots of money, but the number of users is tiny, literally. The number of users of most of the apps is measured in thousands, and it doesn't really grow. You know, I looked like yesterday on many of our competitors, and which these people, they actually released their products way before us, like years before us, and they're not growing. So something is something which is fundamentally wrong, and something that we need to fix. And I think there is one thing which we are doing totally right in SKALE is zero gas fees. Zero gas fees incredibly improve user friendliness, because if you need to use an app, you need to pay money. How many people would use it, right? Like, are people used to paying money for using like web apps, or like for clicking on websites, or for using mobile phones? So it doesn't really happen. People like things free. So one thing which is totally great for SKALE is that we don't have transaction fees. But even with that, there are some things which we can improve and will be improving in 2.1. Because in addition to transaction fees, there are some other things that make crypto way less user-friendly than using a website. I think we can say that crypto becomes user-friendly when crypto products will look and feel as simple as using a website, as using Google Chrome, as using your mobile phone. And we are still far away from this. And in release 2.1, we're actually planning some major improvements to SKALE to actually meet this ultimate goal, to be able to build the apps that will look and feel as simple as what we used to with websites and regular mobile applications.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the classic mass adoption is a really different thing from a bunch of people who are sort of eating their own dog food. And so, if we want to get crypto to go beyond just the 20 people who are best friends, who are all using each other's products, we need to get to a point that mobile got to, right? Where it's just, you take it, you open it up, boom, 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 it's done. Maybe eventually you pay a subscription, but it's a very simple process and you just have utility right away, right? Instant utility. So you talked a little bit about why it's important. Tell us, how, and in SKALE, again, we're in the background mostly, but it's important to have the background things be usable. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about how SKALE is more usable than other blockchains?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcus. We kind of knew that we were more usable, but now we can prove it. And the way we prove it is just by looking at the growth and the number of transactions for the last several months. It's a very simple thing. If transactions are free, people don't think twice about making transactions, right? So it's really easy to understand that, if a transaction is free, the growth becomes faster. And that's actually, now we knew about it. We kind of predicted that. Now we can prove it. And there's a huge mental gap between a free transaction and a low price transaction, because there were some psychologists, some scientists that's proven that, after a certain number, it doesn't even make sense to drop the price, because no matter if you pay 1 cent or you pay 0.1 cent or you pay 0.1 cent, you still use mental energy. So making a transaction for a consumer is not only paying money, but also basically making a mental effort. And mental effort of spending money actually doesn't really depend so much on how much you spend. You could even think about this in normal life. If you just lose your wallet and in the wallet there's like $10 or $100, most people would actually feel pretty much the same bad feeling, no matter how much money you actually lose. So that's an example of, that when you spend money, just the fact of spending it, it does not help usability, because people don't like spending money, and subjectively, they don't even think about how much they spend. They don't like just spending it. So we see clearly that this usability part of SKALE, it's a fundamental thing, and that's something which allowed us in such a short time frame after the version 2 release to get to these numbers. We have as many transactions per day now as Cardano, we have more transactions per day now than Algorand. You know, we have way more transactions than the ZK rollups. We are actually closing really fast on optimistic rollups. So I think that's really a proof of the fact that zero transaction fees matter. But there are also some other nice things about SKALE. SKALE uses lots of advanced technologies. We are trying to be on the edge in terms of what we use. So we use things like DevOps, things like Docker, that actually makes life easy not to our users, but actually to our validators. And it's also incredibly important because, you know, if things are hard for validators, they just will choose another network. They will not support SKALE. So our validators are also our users. And I should say that, you know, we actually focus always on making things automatic, not actually having to get support from our validators. We consider our product more like a self-driving car. You know, we think that when the validator actually runs our product, the product should run itself, heal itself, update itself. So we are targeting this. And there are many things that you can do in the future, but even the current version of the product is doing pretty well in terms of it's pretty easy to install, to run, and to update. And we've been going through many updates, bug fixes recently, and it doesn't really take so much time for the validator to update SKALE because we are using these advanced technologies and modern technologies, simple things in DevOps, like Docker, for instance, which actually make life really simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, there's both on the price side. There's the fact that people like to have a consistent understanding of how much they're going to pay, and so when prices are varying wildly from one minute to the next, they're less likely to use it. Whereas if they know, you know, I either know that I pay X all the time, or I just pay a once a month fee, they're much more likely to use it, and more people are likely to use it. And I think on the other end, you know, to your point, we've really started to create this sort of decentralized community. So all these validators are the ones that are running SKALE network. And if they can update the network very simply, and the network is pretty self-running, then you have this community of people who are able to just make sure that the experience is focused on the user. So that kind of takes to the last question, which is, what are some of the usability features that are going to be in SKALE v2.1, which is the next release?
So there are lots of things coming. We are, you know, we have many software engineers, not so many, but we have really good ones. And everyone is working on some usability features. Usability is really going to be the theme for this release 2.1. So we're doing some really small things, but important. One thing which is really important is improving documentation, you know, because we were coding things really fast. We didn't have time to make the documentation perfect. So lots of work will be going on now in improving our documentation, making sure that we explain things to people. Documentation is hugely important. Also, hugely important things are when things go wrong. If you run a SKALE product, if an error happens, how well does the product tell you about what's happening bad? Because usually people try to code things that to have some behavior, but it's also important when things crash to actually tell people what actually happened, you know, to be able to resolve the problem. So we're doing also lots of polishing in this direction. You know, if something went well, how well we're telling things to people, to our validators, to our users, you know, how easy it becomes for the developer to use us. Because if a developer tries to use SKALE and something doesn't work, if we tell the error clearly, the developer stays with us. If a developer tries running something and doesn't work, and they don't know what's happening, they may go for a competing network. So lots of work is actually going into those very simple and mundane things such as errors. But in addition to all of those small things, there is like this huge elephant in the room, which we have been really like obsessed for the last months. What we figured out, and we've been like figuring it out before, but we are totally sure now that the next big thing after zero fees will be a removal of the confirmation boxes. You know, the way MetaMask works, especially if you work in a multi-chain environment, it actually produces lots and lots of confirmation boxes. And if you play a game, this confirmation boxes just kill the game, right? They just make it impossible to play, except the homebrew people, the homebrew club guys, which like the confirmation boxes. But the point is that what we're seeing this homebrew club guys playing, but the rest of the people not actually able to use blockchain. So the confirmation boxes, and then we've been trying hard to understand how we can develop a breakthrough technology to deal with this. Because if we want to have a similar experience playing games, as normal games, as web games, or as mobile games, we need to get rid of the confirmation boxes. Just making them simple doesn't really, work. Your grandma and your grandpa and people on the street, or people on the subway, they won't play blockchain games if this confirmation boxes constantly pop up. So this is it's a simple problem, but it is the problem after zero transaction fees. And we addressed the first one, and in 2.1 we are really thinking about fundamentally addressing the second one. But it's not so easy to do because we can't control MetaMask, right? So we've been trying different technologies and trying different experiments and pilots, how we can change things and how we can do a workaround to remove this confirmation boxes. And happily enough, recently we did find a pretty nice solution, and the solution turned out to be that we will actually do a tiny modification to the blockchain. So SKALE is a fully Ethereum compatible blockchain, but nothing prohibits us from doing things which are beyond what Ethereum does, right? And so we will be doing a tiny adjustment to the blockchain while still keeping it compatible to MetaMask. And we're kind of thinking about how we're going to call this technology. One kind of temporary name which I have for it is a badge key, a badge, right? Let's say you have a super secret key that requires lots of confirmation. You can issue a temporary key that will be applicable only to a single confirmation, only to a single DF. And this temporary key will only also work for a certain amount of time. So let's say you start playing a game, and there will be only a single MetaMask confirmation. And this confirmation will sign the fact that there is this temporary key, and the key can be used with this application for the next 30 minutes or for the next hour. So when you go to the website of a game, or you use the mobile game, you will only interact with MetaMask once, and the MetaMask will issue this temporary key for an hour, and using this key will not require any confirmation. But this requires us to modify the blockchain a little bit and to use a different type of a signature. The signature will basically say something like, this key has been created in MetaMask and has validity for the next 2 hours. So we're coming from this hard key, creating a temporary key that can only be used with a single application. And in the signature, we're specifying the fact that this key can only be used for several hours. The reason is that because the key is in the browser, so it can't actually be saved anywhere. So this technology does require us to modify a little bit the blockchain, because we changed the format of Ethereum signature. It's a tiny tweak, it's extension to Ethereum. So we're adding this new type of a signature in 2.1 that will support those keys. Once we have this, long story short, once we have this technology, once we do this tiny tweak to the blockchain, the way it's going to look to the users, you will access the website. Let's say you have a particular game, right? Or particular application. You will access the website. When you log into the game, there will be a single MetaMask confirmation box. And the confirmation box will tell you someone will use a temporary key for 3 hours. You will sign the fact that you're creating this temporary key. The fantastic thing is that the temporary key will also work across different chains. So we are going to greatly improve the usability of our cross-chain agent Metaport. We have this Metaport UI, which allows you to transfer tokens across chains. Guess what? These keys will also work with Metaport. Essentially, when you start using Metaport, you will just have a single confirmation box. And then all of the transfers, all of the things you do, there will be no confirmation boxes. And this is going to be a huge improvement. I think currently Metaport has, I think, 3 confirmation boxes, 3. And we will essentially move it to 0. You will only do things once in a session, and then there will be this temporary key that will work for many, many hours. And with this temporary key, the user experience with this temporary key and with 0 transaction fees, the user experience that you will get with SKALE 2.1 will be identical to the user experience that you get in mobile applications, in regular mobile applications, or on the regular web. You will literally, everything will be hidden. You'll play the game, you'll get maybe some tokens paid to you or some NFTs, but you won't see any MetaMask. It will just look as a regular website, and there will be 0 learning curve. So we are super excited about this thing. And so basically there are 2 things for us now. First of all, we are increasing the transactions count using SKALE v 2.0 that is currently running on our network. And our business team is working really hard to get more users and more transactions for the existing network. And we are also pushing with release 2.1, which will address usability, and the foremost will address the issue of the confirmation boxes.
Very cool, very cool. Well, so a lot of really cool new things coming on. Definitely keep us in the loop. And if you look down below, you can get to our Twitter, you can get to our Telegram, you can get to our Discord. Go to any of those to get more information about us. And thanks, Stan. We'll see you next time.